Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all of you. And it's so nice to see so many of you here. And when I thought of this program, I didn't expect that I'll get such a good response. But I'm really very happy that I got so many people today here with us. And I'm looking forward to a riveting conversation with all of you on how to engage OTT platforms in creating content that is gender sensitive.
Very brief 2-minute introduction on why we are here and the purpose of this event, as has been explained to me. The organizers are Population First, which you're familiar with, and the UNFPA. The UNFPA's stated mission is to ensure that every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled. Now, that happens only when you have gender equality in society, and therefore, the UNFPA works towards gender equality, and it works with more than 150 organizations across the world. It has been working with Population First in India since 2007. I won't dwell further on what Population First does, but where the synergies are is that the flagship Laadli Media and Advertising Awards of Population First, which was launched 2007, the same year as they started associating with UNFPA, is rooted in the belief that if we can influence the media, filmmakers, advertising, and the youth of this country on their perception of gender and the equations therein, then we can enable them to be agents of change. Now, we have not called you guys in the room to influence you because you are already substantially influenced and pioneers in your own spaces and champions of gender, many of you, and quite accomplished. We are here to actually hear you out on where things stand when it comes to gender representation. And the second part, as Dr. Sharda said, how do you think there is a, while there are 4 pieces of content which are championing gender equality, there are perhaps 40 instances that you can pick out where there is scope for improvement, to put it mildly. So we just want to hear you out. It's a closed door meeting and the recording is only for internal consumption. No comment, however drastic, will be reported on in any form anywhere. The only communication that will go out is maybe a group picture with all of you all and social media post saying that you were all here. So the comments themselves will be expunged, will not be on record anywhere. So the topic that has been given to us is empowering women on OTT, gender inclusion, and intersectionality in content creation. It took me some time to understand the topic, so I simplified it for myself. An open discussion on, is the opening comments from each of you that I would request is Indian OTT content sensitive and empowering in its portrayal of genders? Is it capturing the different layers and strata of women or representative of only the cream? And where does it stand on diversity and inclusivity? Let us start at one end of the table. May I request Deepika to give her opening remarks?
Hi everybody, I'm Deepika. I'm an editor. I've worked on films and shows and advertising. I've of course met a few of you through my course. Empowerment of women or gender equality narrative has definitely improved, I feel, in the last few years with the kind of content we are watching. There's a drastic change, I feel, from the 90s or the 20s to in the early 2000s, that we used to see women as only as arm candy or, of a certain social section that were, represented on screen has definitely changed. We have a lot of shows where we are showing middle class women or middle class household and women where they're not downtrodden. They are not the typical dukhiaris of the world, which has definitely taken a change ever since OTT has come. We had a void. They were either the bad women who were, scheming against each other, or they were just arm candies to these, uber rich bad boys. And any of them wearing skimpy clothes were, stereotyped in a certain way. So that's definitely improving, but I wouldn't say it has reached a certain level. All of us are aware of the kind of films that are releasing and the way women are portrayed. I personally feel it's not up to my taste, and it definitely has a huge impact. The kind of reach that OTT has today is maybe a lot more than theater also had a while ago, because it's literally in our hands. We don't have to pay for it, dearly to go to a theater or take out time. So the impact of it is very strong, definitely has a lot of scope to improve it. How? Yes, I would, the makers out here would be able to tell better. I'm more of a content creator than a maker per se. But yeah, there has been a lot of change, and even in the way women are treated behind the scenes, which is also a big reason why the content is changing, because it's not, a male dominant or male opinionated society anymore, or industry anymore. There are a lot of women, accomplished women, who are taking the decisions and on what content we are watching, which I think is great. And yeah, I am hoping there's going to be a lot more change.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Deepika. Let's move to Arjun on the other end of the table, representing another segment of stakeholders. A one-line introduction, Arjun, and
Thank you. Just one correction before we start. Arjun Mogre is not content head applause. He just heads unscripted applause. You would know Deepak Saigal is the head of content.
okay, I didn't do that, and it's off record any
Yeah.
case.
Just saying. So, so see, I'll just start on a little bit of a personal note and then get on to the larger picture. I come from a family with, very liberated and empowered women. My grandmom was the first woman that ONGC ever hired in 1954. And my mom was a pioneer in the fitness industry in India. So, I come from a family where I've seen, very, very independent. I mean, my grandmom actually was somebody who earned more than my granddad at one point because he took a sabbatical to study. So, I don't know, so maybe I've lived under a rock for most part of my life. I've studied under Meghna Ghai. So, I've seen a lot of women around, but of course, when you start working in the industry, there was a lot of male dominance. It still is, especially in below the line, we still have a lot of men when it comes to our lights crew, our sets crew. But what's happening is a lot of the assistants that are getting hired nowadays, whether they're assistant art directors, whether they're assistant camera, we're seeing a lot more in the streaming space. Right from you to Monica to everybody, all the decisions are being taken by women, and a lot more women directors are coming in. But I think a lot more needs to be done. How we can do it. So, I mean, while everything is optimistic on one side, there is a lot that needs to be done purely from a creation point of view. So, while we do need more women on screen, we also need more narratives where men are shown empathetic towards women on screen. So, the theatrical pressure of box office is not there for the streaming yet. But once that changes, things might change. So, yeah, that is something that we could work towards.
Interesting point. Let's move to the other end of the table. Nimisha, one-line introduction followed by your.
Hi, I'm Nimisha and I head content for Z5. I think what Arjun said and Deepika said, and I don't think anybody can probably disagree or debate that we have come a long way, but there's a longer way to go.
Sure. Just one request, please address the entire audience. It's not a television one-on-one, so just please speak to the entire audience.
I just said one sentence, but yet.
Going forward, please go on. I'm not stopping you. I'm saying speak to the hall. Don't have to look at me or the camera.
Good translation.
No, we want it to be a discussion amongst all of you. That's the idea, not a one-on-one.
Okay, I have lost my chain of thought, but no, and more importantly, what I was saying was that with the OTT coming, I think all of us can agree that a lot of things have gotten better, whether it is on screen, behind screen, but they are obviously nowhere close to where, I mean, forget ideal, but where we would like it to be. I think something which is extremely important and where things begin from is that currently, and if we talk specifically of OTT, most of the platforms, yes, are currently being led by women, which is really a huge and a remarkable shift. And what it helps is, at the very least, for the conversations to be different, for the conversations to be more balanced, for the content choices, for the crew choices, and for the themes that should be represented in the medium and to be taken to the audience. Uh, Also, in terms of, really taking into account who really are the audience. For the longest time, uh, content was also being served to men. And that is actually how OTT happened in the beginning. Like, there was this unsaid rule, and some reports kind of said that more men are consuming content on OTT, and hence it was being made to serve more male audiences. But that's a shift that has happened, and that's a very objective, and like none of the business reports also can deny it anymore, that there is actually an equal number of men and women who form the audience base. And hence what that results in is that the content that you're creating is for an audience that is as much women and as men, right? Something that I am actually very passionate about and sort of champion very strongly is, so though OTT, what it has done is that it has given a lot of, we can really count on our fingers of strong women-led stories and women protagonists in the parts that were not seen before, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a gangster and things like those, right? But I think what is now even more important is the nuanced portrayal of women in general. So what happens, I think, is that when you are doing, say, and yeah, I would talk about a show at Z5 that we did, a show called Jambaz. So when I was getting pitches for Jambaz, everybody assumed that a Jambaz would be a man. But it did take women in the room to say hello, like you can also do a jambaz on a woman cop, right? So, and that is how we did our first franchise of jambaz with a woman cop. So I'm saying those are one kind of change that's happening, but the other being how women are portrayed even when they are not the central characters or running the show, right? Very conveniently, you would see for all the other women characters slipping into the roles that have been imagined by men writing them most of the times. And I think that is like something which is really powerful, because when you're watching the story, it's not only what the main protagonist is doing, but actually what the women around are doing in that story that really matters. So I feel there are, like, we are in times when there are big changes happening, but it's also the times where we need to make sure that we don't forget the small changes. In continuing to champion for the big changes, we don't sort of overlook the small ones, which are equally important in shaping the narrative, which is going to be helpful in women empowerment.
Thank you. Women audiences influencing content, and an eye for portrayal of women beyond the protagonist or as the protagonist. At the end of the table, finally, we're moving to a filmmaker, writer. Nishant, one-line introduction followed by your opening remarks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nishant. I'm a writer, filmmaker. I'm working for both films and OTT. I was just, actually, I thought it would be a round table literally for some reason. And although I think the tables are meant to form a circle, so that's kicking my OCD because it's left some gaps. So now that you know that I have a lot of nervous energy, I wanted to share this thing because whenever I get anxious and when I get a block, I play with ChatGPT. And I just give it random prompts and play along with whatever it generates. And I said one of these days, I was just thinking, and it said, ki, adapt Romeo and Juliet to a village setting in India. And this is what it generated. Set against the rustic backdrop of rural India, imagine Raj Sinha and Leela Sharma as the protagonist whose forbidden love unfolds, blah, blah, blah. Then we all know how Romeo and Juliet. Then I said, adapt Romeo and Juliet for the year 3000 in India. This is what it said. In the year 3000, on the technologically advanced landscape of India, Raj Arora and Priya Malhotra love transcends planetary divides, blah, blah, blah. Now, I kept doing this, and it came up with bizarre scenarios and very, very visually stunning responses as well. The only commonality was all of these protagonists were upper castes. I was wondering, now this is not some human, this is a bot, and this is generating all these responses based on data, and this data is available everywhere. Now there is Facebook, there is Instagram, and all kinds of people are there. Now I was wondering, why is this bot, which can collect all data from everywhere, is doing this? Why are, first of all, and it is pulling data specifically from media sources, and where media sources, whether it's film, TV, or OTT, all the characters, most of the characters are invariably Savarna. And because we were talking about intersectionality, this theme, I thought I would say this because there was this, recently I was talking to a producer and we were talking about an honor killing. And it was about honor killing, and obviously because it was honor killing, it had an upper caste girl and a lower caste boy, and he said कि ये सब सही है, पर ये ना बहुत caste पे बहुत सारी चीजें हो रही हैं. Now I said this is the basic, and it comes from a true story. And I said, why do you want me to change this thing because बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा है? I said, what do you want me to do? He said class. मैंने कहा class पे stories नहीं हुई नहीं है. Caste पे हुई है, class पे नहीं हुई. या तो I was doing this short film which had two men from different castes falling in love, and got a similar kind of feedback saying कि caste का इतना कुछ समझ में नहीं आता है, आप इसको मुस्लिम बना दो, हिंदू मुस्लिम की लव स्टोरी करते हैं. तो मैंने कहा, what is it that you make, religion doesn't make you uncomfortable, class doesn't make you uncomfortable, caste does. Why? Because it ultimately questions your own privilege, a privilege that you have we all are a part of, and that's why it makes you uncomfortable. And that's why when it gets into spaces of discussions like this, if you see boardrooms, if you see creative rooms, writers' rooms, newsrooms, it's all led by Savarna. It's great that at least for a gender equality conference, we have so many women. Otherwise, if you see on news, they're talking about reservations, and all the panel is Savarna. And that just amazes me. And this happens everywhere, including NDTV. So, and that's the same thing why people are posting about Palestine, that you're not, of course you can be moved with what's happening in Palestine, but you don't get moved in the similar way. I don't see the similar upheaval on Instagram or anywhere else about Khairlanji or an Una. And that is because it questions your own, it makes you churn in your seat. And I was reading somewhere and about a feminist, and she said that feminist inherently is inclusive. And if it's not inclusive, it's not feminism. Because you see, the hierarchy, Savarna men, Savarna women, Dalit men, Dalit women. There is a very interesting relationship between Dalit men and Savarna women because those tables can always turn. And because being the gender and caste dynamics both, you can have an upper hand at any one of the scenarios. But while going up, while moving up, if you don't pull Dalit women with you or tribal women with you, because of the sisterhood, it's not feminism, it's just extending the privilege. It's Brahminism. Thank you.
Very interesting. Not just the obsession, 2030, you said 3000, Romeo and Juliet in 3000. And it was still Aurora and Malhotra. What? It's not just the upper caste thing that eggs me being a Krishnamurti, because. Anyways, let's take a reverse order. Insia, opening comments with a one-line introduction, please.
Hi, my name is Insia Dariwala. I am a writer-director by profession and I run two non-profits. One of my non-profits work on child sexual abuse and the other one works on female genital mutilation. I'm not sure if most of you here know about it, but it exists in a community which I belong to. And I just recently made a film on it as well. I am actually one of the odd ones out in the sense that I have got to see life on both sides. I've delved into the real world and in my workspace with the nonprofit, and that too issues like child sexual abuse and domestic violence and everything that you don't want to hear about or talk about. I have gone there and I've seen real life cases. And I've also delved in fiction. And in fact, my journey in this space started on a film which I had Irfan Khan in it, and it was a very light-hearted film, which started as a light-hearted film and then became a thriller. And I also acted in it. What I feel is that we have a long way to go. That's my, and especially maybe if I was just in the space of films and television, and I've been in all those spaces, right? So now today, sitting here, I can say that we have a very, very long way to go. Not because we are not showing empowerment on OTT, we are showing, but we are like tipping the apple cart, I feel, you know? It's like we started off by showing women in a certain light. We wanted to see them in a certain light. We wanted women to be the women that we are. And we forget that beyond these doors, there are women who are out there who do not have the same privileges like us. And we are, even though we are privileged, I think we have had many challenges. I have had, I'm sure women sitting here have had in their spaces. When we began, like when I began my career, I was a single parent. And I went to meet some very big directors for a job. And the first question I got asked is, who's going to take care of your child while you are here? Because obviously a film demands you blood and sweat and everything. And who's going to take care of your child? So that, I feel nobody asks that to a man, right? Nobody would ask that when you are on the set, who's going to take care of your child? So we have a long way to go because women are battling these questions every day. You know, when we leave homes, when we leave, I have known to be on a set in the middle of a shot and get a call from my son saying, I cannot find my book, I cannot find, I mean, he's 23 now, thank God for that, but but these are the challenges that women face. We don't see that in our OTT. We don't see that in films. We don't see that in television. We don't see it. We either see a woman that is really like, Jabaz, Daredevil, or we will see somebody who is really downtrodden and, the underdog story then. But there are, in the middle, in the spaces that we are not looking at, I think there are women who have their stories too. And the spaces that I work in, I come across these women every day. And like Nimisha said, and what Arjun said, we start by seeing what we are growing up with. So I grew up with very empowered women around me, my grandmother, my mother. And so I am like, this daredevil. But then there are women who are not like me, who do not, who for them even to get out of the house. Like I have a colleague who doesn't know how to travel alone. And she is a PhD, she's a doctorate. She doesn't know how to travel alone. It was her dad who used to assist her in travels. And then she got married and then her husband started assisting her. And she gave up an entire big trip that we were supposed to go to for a work trip because I had to back out and she had to travel alone. And this was an international trip. And we were like, what's wrong with you? It was a fully paid trip. And she's like, no, Insia, I have never traveled alone. I do not have the confidence to do it. So there are these women as well. And then recently, I encountered a woman my dad was in ICU, who was a security person outside of the ICU. And 10:30 in the night, her duty gets done. And she's like, no, pitti si bandi. You would never look at her and say, okay, what is her backstory? We don't know. And I see her in this security ka costume, and I'm standing out, and then suddenly she's in a salwar kameez. Okay, very gharelu looking with a nice bindi and all that. And she's walking. So I asked her, I said, 10:30 at night, chal ke ja rahi hai? And she said, हाँ madam, Chakala tak jaungi abhi chal ke. Now this is Arogya Nidhi Hospital in Juhu. She's going to walk all the way to Chakala at 10:30 in the night, 1.5 hours, just because she doesn't want to spend that money on a rickshaw. And if she spends that money on a rickshaw, her husband is going to say कि तू तो ज़्यादा खर्च कर रही है, तेरी कमाई किस काम की फिर, if you are not giving in the house. So to justify her existence in her career space, she has to walk. I think these are stories that we never see. We never see a common woman's journey. And it would be nice to see more of that in OTT, I think. To see real women. We either go too low or the bar is set too high. What about in the middle? And I think that is important.
Wonderful. What about in the middle is the question. And move to Pubali on the other side. All yours. Rock on.
Since I have that reputation to live up to. I essentially agree with everything that has been said so far, and I don't know how it's going to pan out with 11 of us repeating all the right-sounding noises. So I think two things to remember is that entertainment or arts exist in a socio-political economic context. We don't just, we do operate out of just isolated rooms, but we are trying to reflect what's happening around us. To have strange kind of expectations from narratives, either uphold, be like a moral teacher, or just do something that's kind of out of place. At best, we are trying to capture the truth and reality of our times, and we will do what exists around us, right? So it's not like only films and television can fabricate something, unless we are doing like a really fantastic tale, which a lot of mainstream entertainment is about. So that there's that. Also, I want to talk about economics. I think while broadly we definitely see more women representation, characters having agency, let's be honest, especially amongst us makers and part of the industry and executives, it's an economic decision. Since women earn nowadays, therefore the washing powder ad can say share the load, because your target audience, your buyer is a woman. If we didn't have that, we would happily carry on focusing only on men's stories. Because finally, we are in a business. We do not have state patronage in this country. We are not seeing films or content coming out for art's sake or even for social messaging. We are completely driven by market, and that's the reality. If we suffer as individual professionals, I'm sure all our colleagues as executives also have similar pressures. So I find a lot of this newfangled feminism slightly surface, to be honest, and I actually disagree. OTTs did not exist earlier, but I think even mainstream Hindi films, the kind of gender equations, not that I'm doing a feminist film. I recently rewatched Rajnigandha, and I'm so taken by it now that I've rewatched, and it's just a middle-of-the-line kind of film. It's not, I don't think it ever publicized itself as a feminist film per se. The woman has a job. You have scenes of her at her office, which is something we just don't have. She might be a scientist, she might be a doctor, but every time you see her in a cafe or wherever, they're never at work, Nobody wears wristwatches, but we've stopped wearing wristwatches. So it was so interesting to see the actress have a wristwatch, sit at an office, do some work while thinking of her lover. I mean, that just felt so much more real and believable. And incidentally, Rajnigandha is about a women's transgressive desire. And overall, I think we've regressed as a society. So yes, we need to have exceptional superwomen characters fighting against oppression or fighting for justice. But this, like Insia said, ordinary women, also flawed women characters. Gender portrayal is not about portraying women on pedestal, which is a very old trick of patriarchy. So can we get done with, oh, she's Mahan, she's Mother India, she's the only one who has to fight against. Women are flawed. We are equally culpable, capable of jealousy, anger, power hungriness that exists in us, exists in the society. And I feel there's still a lot of sanitization in terms of when you say, oh, we need to show women in positive light, even that is a stricture, and that I don't think is actually pushing the envelope. And it completely alienates the male audience because they say that वही मतलब मदर टेरेसा टाइप एक कैरेक्टर दिखाएगी वो सब कुछ में सही है या तो कुछ फायर ब्रांड फेमिनिस्ट है so men are also turned off. So who are we speaking to? And speaking of intersectionality, again I'll bring attention back to market. If urban people are watching shows, and maybe now we are reaching small towns or whatever, I don't really have all the data. So we are catering to the people who are going to watch. So we have fewer and fewer content which will cater to more broad, diverse, intersections of the society. Of course, we do have in pockets LGBTQ representation, and that's also become a buzzword. I feel we are largely driven by buzzword because those make us look woke. And there's a market for it. I very much doubt that internally the societies we're still in a flux. We're still in a flux, and a whole lot of us in the office chambers, in the production houses, we really get to see where we are at. Attitude, I mean, this is behind the camera or behind it, and I'm not saying I'm particularly more oppressed than a male colleague, but it certainly matters if a 5'0" woman is speaking up. You do not win popularity ratings in the industry for being a woman who speaks up. And all of our male colleagues, most of our male colleagues do the bro code so much better. For anything, us women, we are very fair. We are not so, we are not out here helping other women. But the men, they are off to their own drinking, soirees. And, all our male colleagues are getting on fine with directors. All of us women, even if there's a woman director or a woman executive, yaar, wohi mera draft ko ye kar diya. So that's fair. I'll take that on my chin. I don't need special cards that you're a woman, so you must be treated with a, kid glove. But the reality is different, and we are nowhere near portraying all of that. Because also, let's admit it, entertainment, we are very far off from trying to capture any truth. Mainstream entertainment is about capturing faff. And we are very busy trying to do that. Within that, one woman can swear, or she can be in a cop uniform. It's largely surface. I think even a film like Silsila, I think it'll be very tough for me to pitch that. It hasn't got nothing to do with maybe feminism, but just adult, matured relationships, flawed characters. I don't think we are there. We are all in this charading business also with social media. Everything's happy, everything's nice. Even being woke is so much like flaunting. Right? I have to say that I protested and blah, blah, blah. So I think a lot of it is surface, and you can't blame just the film industry because it happens with the culture around you.
Well put, the film industry is but a subset of who we are and what we are. Yeah, and you also touched upon the commerce aspect of it. We will come to it from the platform heads to hear whether gender empowering content is actually working and how well is it working. Let's move to Jyoti, but before that, since you mentioned Ariel and share the load, there's a theory floating around that when men do the laundry, they use more detergent. And I actually asked them this, they refused to answer. So over to you, ma'am. Jyoti, opening remarks with a one-line introduction.
Hi. So I am primarily a screenwriter, and I have been, so while I have mostly been working on films, after 18 years of being a screenwriter, this is the first time that I was able to sell a female protagonist to a platform, and I'm very happy that the show is greenlit. That said, I find myself struggling with things like, I'm basically taking the thought forward जो पुबाली बात कर रही थी, कि वो जो छोटी छोटी लड़ाइयाँ होती ना, and I'm purely talking, I'm not going to talk, I'm only going to talk about me as a creator when I struggle. So the little things that I'm struggling with are, यार तुम्हारी हीरोइन आते ही उल्टी कर रही है, so मतलब I am trying to look at, like I'm trying to protect the vomits and farts, forget about big things. My point is कि आप झंडा लेके तो नहीं मार्च, like you have to create nuanced characters. अभी तो surface skim कर रहे हैं, अभी तो कुछ भी नहीं किया है हमने. We are ticking the boxes, and we are also being hired as creators because women are watching those shows, and so we know that this is, see, I'm really happy we are, and that's how the change will come about. But let's not forget that we as storytellers also have to create nuanced characters. And another thing which has happened, ever since people are talking the right things, and हम बहुत woke हो गए हैं, and we all want to be politically correct, and so इससे पहले, when people were not so politically correct, they would just come up to me and say, ज्योति जी आपकी पिछली फिल्म ने इतने करोड़ कमाए थे, आइए आप हमारे लिए एक कहानी लिखिए. अभी क्या होता है, a male director जिसको अपनी फिल्म या शो ग्रीन लाइट कराना है, जिसने पिछले 5 साल बैठ के वो स्टोरी लिखी या whatever, they shat all over it, and now that they have to again tick the boxes, they'll come to me and say, आप एक बार देख लेंगी कि क्या इसमें जो सारे फीमेल कैरेक्टर्स हैं उनको देख लीजिए ना. तो मैं उन्हें बोलती हूँ कि भाई साहब आपको पहले क्यों नहीं याद आया, जब 5 साल पहले आप एक ये बड़ी when you were laying the foundation, that's when you should have come to me. So yes, I think yes, we are ticking the boxes, but I really think that we अभी ये सब again ये सब पैसे का खेल है. I really feel that whatever sells and how we can sell it, and sometimes that works against us also. I would rather be known as a screenwriter and not a woman screenwriter. And but yes, I'm glad, and also it's very important that we have women decision makers who will allow us to to defend my heroine who is फ्लॉड. तो मतलब बॉडीली फंक्शंस ही दिखा दें उसकी तो बहुत बड़ी बात है, वो जो नुआंसेस हैं वो तो हम बाद में कैप्चर करेंगे. बट आई एम सेइंग इट हेल्प्स इफ देयर इज अ वुमन सिटिंग देयर. येस यू विल फाइट, येस देयर विल बी अदर कंसर्न्स, बट द पॉइंट इज कि उसे छोटी छोटी चीज़ें मुझे डिफेंड नहीं करनी पड़ेंगी शायद, सो येस.
Thank you so much. There seems to be a slight difference of opinion between the two neighbors, but we'll come to that later. Maybe move to this side of Myra, your opening thoughts on the topic. And a brief introduction, please. A one-line introduction also.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was, I think, late by 10 to 15 minutes, so missed the initial part. I'm an actress. I have been working for the past 10 years now. I started my career with South, and I'm a Gujarati, so I did a Gujarati film. And fortunately, after working for 9 years, I could have my hands on my first Hindi film, which was Satya Prem Ki Katha, and I was playing Kiara's younger sister. Pardon my language a little, I'm a little nervous. Never got into this round table with such experienced people. So fortunate to be here. Feminism, I think we are all sitting here to talk about it itself is a matter of concern, how I look at this thing. I don't remember that people sit here and would ever talk about a male-centric film why is it always a matter of concern when it comes about a female-centric film? If we also talk about some beautiful films, new age films like Alia Bhatt when she did Razi. It was a beautiful film. And still, in spite of being a star kid, it's still a female-led film. So I always feel this thing, why when a female is doing a film, it's called a female-led film. And when it is a men-based film, we never say that it's an Akshay Kumar film, or it's a Shah Rukh Khan film, or it's a Salman Khan film. And I won't add too much. I think two wonderful ladies who are sitting here have said a lot. And we need, I think, more opportunities, even opportunities. I'm not saying that actresses who are not very talented should be getting the role. I think it should be very equalized, in my opinion, that if somebody is really deserving, it shouldn't be in a form of कि वो लड़की है तो उसको क्यों ये role मिल रहा है. Yeah, I think if we can even change this thought of our film industry, where even with the pay parity, I don't want to get into the numbers, we all know, but females are always usually paid much more lesser than the guys. And they are both the co-leads. So that's also something I feel that I don't understand, this thing of it's being always judged with this thing ki box office pe kitna aa raha hai. We have some beautiful actresses. We have Vidya Balan. We have Kangana Ranaut. We have Alia Bhatt. We have so many actresses who can do some really amazing work. But also with this given thought, I think we also need audience who can go and watch films that have been driven by females. I think we need a lot of audience which will go to the theaters only to watch female-driven films. I think being female, there are too many people I know in my industry, in my family, who would not usually go and watch a Vidya Balan film, but they would definitely go and watch a Ranbir film. They would definitely go and watch an Akshay Kumar film. So I think there is a mindset issue. It's not only limited to our industry, but with the society we live in. Yeah, I think I'll end it. Thank you.
Thank you. An actor's perspective, I don't think it's possible to completely demarcate the film and OTT industries. But that said, the theme for today is OTT. So in that context, Svetlana, your opening remarks and a brief introduction.
Hi everyone, I am Svetlana. I've been in the field of marketing of films for last 20 years. And fortunately, I've seen the industry evolve from really male-dominated actors and posters all about them to now women being on them. And I mean, coming from hardcore business perspective, because I have been part of number crunching, and I mean, people who are my colleagues here would understand marketing is all about sales. It's all about selling whatever's been given to you. And adding on to what Pubali said, it's hardcore business. And you know, we have the onus of opening numbers, and you know, as marketing, you deliver the Fridays, and oh, sorry, okay. So I think, you know, the kind of pressure that we dealt with in 20 years that I've seen, and I think I know where everyone's coming from, and I think you all are all creators. I think I come from the selling point of view. Okay, I've been in the field of distribution. I handle global distribution and marketing for films globally, not just India as a market. So you know, it's very good news is and bad news is, I'll say that. Good news is that the market has opened not just in India, but globally for women-centric films. And, you know, I have been part of few journeys where we faced a lot of resistance while we wanted to distribute those films, starting with a film called Dirty Picture. And this was a film which was going to go international distribution, and nobody wanted to touch it. And that is the time when I was consulting, you know, we were part of a boutique distribution company, and we were on commission basis, we picked it up because obviously there were no revenues that we could see it. And idea was to at least take it to a few markets and see how it does. And that film did more than $1 million just in the US. And that kind of gave us a lot of hope because it was Vidya Balan. It was not that big.
So I think it was also about opening markets. Okay, I think as marketers also it's our job not just to sell what sells. I think it's also about perception building. I mean, there were no iPhones few years back, and there was a market created for smartphones and smart TVs, and then they were serviced. I think, I mean, we all have spoken enough about, as creators, but I think as marketers and as distributors, it's also about opening new markets, and it's also about marketing your films in a certain way, positioning those films in a certain way. And I think international market is also very receptive. It's not very, I think it's easier at times, I feel, dealing with international audience than dealing with Indian audience as a marketer. I'll be very honest with you. We're very rigid. We're very rigid. Like, I've come from a place where I remember when I started my career, I was part of ad labs and Reliance and all. We used to make special posters that will go to Hindi belt, where we would have women show skin as a designer, and it used to, I mean, I would cringe as a woman, when I would be sitting with my, Rahul Nanda and all of these people, and we would make a different Hindi poster, and that Hindi poster would have a leg showing or a skin show, or, that's where the woman would be in the center and the men on the other side, and stuff like that, and that's where the world where all the, the dancing numbers became like a big hit, and that was all marketing, you needed a song to make a film hit, and I've been part of all those journeys, and it's not that I have not. But yes, a dirty picture changed a lot of things for us. I was part of Queen. Again, similar story. I was part of making of the Queen. I was part of Phantom at that point in time. From greenlighting that film to selling that film was a task. We had to take it to festivals to prove a point. And that journey was, and I kept telling everybody, it's not a festival kind of typical film. It can go to theaters. And there were no buyers. There was no market for it at that point. We were called a chick flick, and it's so weird because just because it's a woman, and that film, I think, changed a lot of things. And it was not just for women. I think that film went to everybody. I think it spoke to all of us. I think we all resonate with that film at some point, and I think those are the kind of feminist films we really need. And it's not about patriarchy versus matriarchy, male gaze and female gaze, and I think we all talk about the Baghdad test and the trailer talking, and we talk all those big jargons in our industry, and I have been part of those many such meetings in big conference halls with the biggest of people there. Thanks to a lot of women like y'all who've taken, charge in big organizations that we are saved, because especially with a lot of male, I've been part of organizations run by men as producers. And so, yeah, coming to Queen, I mean, I remember when we were selling Queen, we finished festivals. We had standing ovation at every festival we went. And we went to the biggest of festivals, I mean, possible. And when we came back and we were trying to sell distribution for it, there were no takers again. We literally had to rebrand it. We created a different logo and we rebranded the whole thing to give it a new look and feel, to make it look younger and this and that. We created that whole song. Like trailer, I think we all fought about the trailer for at least a month. That first scene of her crying. It opens with that scene, Mera life itna kharab ho gaya, okay? And people were like, how do you start your, exactly, how do you have your heroine crying in your first scene? I mean, how do you do that? And I said, we need to, that's what she is. And I think that became the selling point. But, that's what I'm saying. As a woman marketer, when you come there, it's so important. Because understandably, we create those changes, those slight changes. It's about creating a slight change as to how you create that market. We are not going to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Because, yes, you can create the best of content. Ultimately, it's all numbers. Ultimately, it comes down to who's your TG. I have to define my TG every time. Now, as creators, I think because it's about then we come to what's your TG like? Is it going to get the ROIs we're looking for? And the kind of budgets. The budget I got for marketing a film called Queen and probably a dirty picture vis-a-vis the film budgets I got when I did 3 Idiots, obviously you can't compare the two. So even with those unlimited things, as we're supposed to deliver whatever, we're supposed to do magic with that. So it's very difficult in a space, but fortunately, with the OTT coming in, I read somewhere, I think it was a Netflix roundtable which says streaming. And I loved it, I think, yeah, because I think streaming has made strees a little more forward in that sense. We've come a little more forward with our content there. But I still feel we are still selling sex and violence. We are still talking to a TG which is male when you're talking sex and violence. Because I think we're not really empowering women if it's a revenge drama. If it's I'm raped and I'm trying to go and kill that man, it's self-destruction, I feel. You're really not still empowering. I think we need to talk films which are like English Winglish, very subtle. But I mean, yes, it talks about not maybe the upper strata or the lower strata, but it does change the way we look at generally. You know how I looked at my mother. My mother never spoke English, and I think somewhere I resonated with that film so much because she somewhere aspired. And so yes, those kind of things do affect you at deeper levels. Films like Queen, and like this year I was part of good films like Satya Prem, I marketed, by the way, internationally. uh, it did have a very different take. There's a sensitive man being shown, and I think, I mean, that's a change in dialogue, I agree. I think even the household was a little matriarchal. I don't know if how many of you all seen the film. And so, yes, I mean, there was a little change in the way perspectives are, it is changing. I don't know if this was possible another 5 years ago or 10 years ago, a film like Satya Prem, honestly, where you're talking about something so grave and where you are actually having your male being so sensitive and not the typical, the toxic masculinity that's happening. And I am scared, are we regressing? Because we shouldn't. It has taken many filmmakers hard work to bring films like Queen and Piku and many more. Like even films like Tumhari Sulu or many more. With such beautiful films out there. So, like, I was part of Goomer this year. I've distributed it internationally. And what a beautiful film. In fact, I asked that question and for Balki told me this, and Balki is the director. And he says, I was asked, why not a man? Like, to make the cricketer, why? It could be anybody. Why do you have to have her? And he said, no, it had to be her. Well, how many times, I mean, cricket has to go mainstream because women cricket is taking over and somebody has to talk about it. So I think we need that change, and I think there are sensitive filmmakers, who are really coming forward and showing women as flawed and as we are, and bringing us more in the mainstream. And yes, it's a gradual change, but I think at least we are headed that way, which gives me hope. Unfortunately, the numbers don't look that good for theatrical.
Svetlana, sorry to interrupt. We'll come to the numbers. That's the next part of the thing. It's very difficult to stop people when they're speaking so passionately about a subject. But as I said, we do have a hard stop, so please bear with me. No offense meant. We will pivot to the numbers part with you, Karan. Just bear with me for a moment. Let's let the remaining ladies go first, and then we'll pivot to the second topic. Ma'am Mrinalini, may I request you to share your opening remarks?
Hi, I'm Mrinalini. I'm a producer. I think it's difficult to add more, but having said that, I'd like to say the following. Firstly, I think feminism is a much misunderstood term. I think the moment something becomes about men versus women, it's an inaccurate way to describe a movement which was fundamentally to fight for equality for women. And I think just the fact that fighting for equality puts you in the corner and implies that you don't wish the betterment of the opposite sex says a lot about how much mass information gets convoluted to mean something. The business of entertainment is exactly that. It is about business. And the convenient thing thrown at all of us when we want to do something with women being shown as the central character is the fact that there isn't a market out there for it, or not at least large enough, which I refuse to believe. Because today we stand in a year where Barbie was a billion-dollar franchise. Taylor Swift is on the cover of Time, having had $1 billion in an entire tour that took America through its worst year. And I also feel that the future is female. Just because the numbers don't showcase that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It might happen gradually, which is very, very frustrating for all of us who live that life, who balance out many lives within one in comparison to our male counterparts. But I genuinely believe that unfortunately, entertainment alone can't take the load of change. It is something that has to happen fundamentally at a grassroots level. The day the woman running the house gets paid for her services, you'll know how much women contribute to society. The problem is we are seen as free labor in comparison to all the men who work in fields and in factories and in whatever kind of job. While what a woman contributes to society, unless it's in a chair with a placard is fundamentally free. And until that doesn't change, no matter how much we fight the good fight, mothers, educators, any kind of female in society will never get taken seriously, because eventually it all comes down to numbers, which I understand is something you want to discuss later. But creativity doesn't stand alone. It doesn't stand just, unfortunately, in a country like as art is art's sake. I'd love for it to do that, but it doesn't. And it goes through many challenges at so many levels and gets questioned so much the moment you want to bring in a female as a central character in a story in any form. Or even when she's playing the wife or the girlfriend or whichever part she's playing, she gets questioned far more than what the male character will do. And that stems from our belief of the place women hold in society. There was a film that came out a couple of years ago, actually a little more, Sonchiriya, which had a line that really changed something inside me. You had Bhumi Pednekar being a Thakur girl, and she's talking to who was, I'm assuming, was meant to be Phulan Devi, and telling her that, listen, I'm a Thakur woman, so obviously I'm pretty high on the food chain. When Phulan Devi laughs and said, listen, you're a woman, you're the lowest on the food chain. And I think that again comes down to economic empowerment more than anything else. Until women are financially independent, no matter what we do, no matter how much we fight, we'll either be feminists or we'll be the one who will always be ousted out of the boys' club. Coming back to one point of mine, I'm hoping that very soon in the near future there's a women's club, which men really fight to get into, and they feel very scared of taking us on. But let's see, hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you so much. Quickly moving on to Radhika, opening comments and a brief introduction.
Hello everyone, I'm Radhika. I'm an EP, a freelance EP, currently working with Maddock for a film. So I am that part which is mainly behind the camera, which very rarely you'll see a woman who's leading and all of that. So I'm very happy to be here. Adding to what you just said, yes, we are there. We have just started. In fact, I want to say that we've just started and we have a long way to go. Though we are trying and we are seeing a lot of change coming through, and yes, there will be a club very soon, but I still feel that the stories being told are still by somebody who doesn't really know us. We still are finding some sort of a gap between the narratives. I mean, if a story is being told, which is about us, being told by us, then the impact is going to be different than it's been told by somebody who knows us, but they doesn't really know us as well. So where I feel is that we need a lot more women writer, though we have plenty in the industry, and I'm sure you guys are dealing with male directors who are telling you to change things. But I mean, there is some sort of a gap, and I don't know how to bridge that gap, because I see everybody's working at their level and they all are putting their point across. So somewhere, yes, we've just started, we're getting there, and I'm sure there will be a club. That's all I want to say.
Lovely behind the scenes perspective. Before we come to Karan, Divya, your opening remarks, and somebody can pass on a mic to her, please.
Hello. Yes. Deep apologies for coming in so late. I think I missed out in the first 20, 25 minutes, but I think they are really looking for the core of the earth in Andheri because it is all dug up. And I feel slightly nauseous because it's taken me one cab, one auto, and about 1,500 steps of walking to get here. But I'm so glad I'm here because there are so many female producers in this room, and I need a big round of applause for all of them. I say this wholeheartedly because I started my career as a journalist. For about 10 years, I forayed into writing about cinema, and then I started performing as an actor on stage and on screen. And about 5 years back, I started writing and directing my own films. Never had a chance to work with a female producer yet, and I'm so glad to be seeing so many of them in this room. Speaking about empowering women on OTT, first of all, I think that the minute we start putting the women in our lives who are already pretty empowered in their own space on OTT, we will start empowering films and characters on OTT. Women who are our mothers, our grandmothers, our sisters, our principals, our maids, our managers, our makeup artists, the lady who drives the auto rickshaw in Kerala, the lady who's standing in at a petrol pump in Kerala, filling up petrol for all the guys who come along. The minute all of these women start becoming part of our stories on screen, the empowering will already happen. Having said that, I made 2 short films. They're not on, actually one of them is on Hotstar. One is called Her First Time. The subject was about a little girl who gets her first period when her mother is away working. Second is called Dancing Queen. Again, the story of a little girl who's married off too early before she starts looking ahead towards her dream of becoming a dancer. Both female-led, both talking about girls who need to stand up for themselves. Both did very well on YouTube. One has 4 million hits. The other is just about hitting 1 million hits. And I want to tell you this. I'm a woman who wrote the film. I'm a woman who directed those films. Most of my crew, my DOP, my makeup artist, my editor, half of my crew was female-led. But the responses that I got for both these films, about 70% of them were from boys, were from men. There were brothers who wrote in and told me they did not know what their sisters go through when they're menstruating. There were fathers who wrote in and told me that they have been guilty of the fact that they have kind of empowered their sons to go ahead and pursue their dreams, but their daughters have kind of stood behind because they couldn't afford to look at their daughters as equal as their sons. So when I got those responses from the other gender, so to speak, I felt like I've made my point. I felt like all the women in this room are already on my side and have already understood what I, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, is trying to say. But the men who are probably not in my shoes physically or emotionally are the ones who need to watch the films that I'm making, understand where I'm coming from, feel as sensitive as I do. And when that, that synergy happens, that's when I think the empowering will happen. The money having set aside. I don't know anything about how much money female-led films make. It's a long debate because a film like what's the Ranbir Kapoor film that just released? Animal has made 600 crores. And when you said that, are we regressing? I think we've regressed a lot in the past 1 month because I don't know how that film makes money. And that film has, and that's a harsh reality of this country, and we have to acknowledge that people want to watch that. Yesterday, I was taking a walk in the park, and a friend of mine told me that a female friend of his has watched Animal 4 times. And I looked at him and said, why? There must have been something that's attracted her to that film. That why is what we need to answer. And that why ka answer will come eventually. It's not going to come at this table or probably in the next couple of hours. But the more films we make, the more we communicate with men, women, and all the other genders that exist in society today, the more feedback we take from them, the more the market and the world will open for the women in our lives. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Divya. Finally, we get to Karan. With due apologies, your opening remarks, and then we can go into the second part, which we were supposed to touch at 5 o'clock, is gender empowering content finding acceptance. What are the OTT metrics saying, along with your opening remarks?
Yeah, thank you. So I work as an executive producer at Hotstar, and I also lead an initiative at Disney called Diversity and Inclusion. We have spoken earlier. I will, without repeating anything which everyone has said, I agree with a lot of things and I disagree with few things. Firstly, I would like to say, it's, as you said, it's about business and it's about economics of it. I think first thing to focus on is about stories. Story has to, if it's a good story, it will travel. Without, it's gender agnostic. We have, Hotstar as a platform is very male driven, right? Male audience. But we have made stories with women-centric characters and women leading those stories, and we have seen tremendous success on those stories. So I disagree when we say that there is no market for women-centric stories or we don't want to make it. I think it all boils down to good story. Like Queen, for example, good story, it traveled. Initially you faced resistance, but it traveled because it's a good story. People liked it. Also, I would like to touch upon another topic, which is, I think it's never about men versus women. We're talking about gender diversity. We're not talking about transgender women. Where are LGBT stories? It has to be an inclusive and diverse, story with diverse characters. So I think instead of saying that, we should push women stories or we should push women creators, I was watching another interview of Zoya where she was saying, as much as she would like to empower women and hire more women in her crew, she will never compromise on the art. And if she wants a talented DOP, she will look for a talented DOP. So I think the space where we need to work on is creating and empowering talent. We need to train them. We need to give opportunities at the ground level so we get talent which will help in a good storytelling purpose, right? We have seen movies like Tali. We have seen movies like Queen. Personally worked on projects like Arya. I worked on a project called Human where we had female lead who happens to be lesbian as well. So we're talking about a story where there are two different, for a male-centric audience, it's a problematic theme, but the story worked pretty well. So I think it all boils down to good storytelling. If you make it with full conviction, if you have conviction in the story and you have the right, if you want to tell it with the right intention, I think it will travel. Also, how much it has changed, you asked about the numbers, I think. So I did some study. We are changing with a speed of 2% per year. I think that's very slow. We need a lot of work. But I also feel when it comes to inclusion, I think if you see past 10 years, we were in a place where we were making a lot of regressive content, right? But now we are in space where we are at least not making, like barring the recent example of Animal, we are rarely making those regressive content. We have moved away from that and we are in a space where we're making good stories. We are at least trying, we are all learning. I think next 10 years we should be in the place where we are making the right choices in terms of inclusion and diversity.
So can you just elaborate on that 2% per year? We are changing at the rate of 2% per year. What is that?
So the 2% is the number of women talent in the industry, number of women-centric stories in the industry. So some of that, 2 to 3%, it's broadly that.
So there is a market is what you're saying. Now before getting into this boring round table, one by one ring, I think maybe we can start with Nimisha, who's representing Z5, because the question is on numbers. Is women-centric content finding the numbers? What are the metrics saying?
Okay, I'm going to tell you some secrets here, and this is just for us. See, there will be all these mysterious things that platforms and everybody will tell you about data and numbers, and they'll use jargons and all of that. But the biggest truth of really all of it is that data is simply telling you history. Okay, and if you look at OTT in our country currently, it is still at such a nascent stage that forget understanding metric, but also truly defining metric is still something that is constantly happening. So I would really hate for anybody to say that the metric is saying that this kind of storytelling should happen or not. Because we are still somewhere touching the tip of the iceberg where the audience base is concerned. So if somebody is telling you it's male-skewed audience, I am ready to take that fight head on and say that is today's reality. And the content that you're making is not like exactly today का reality के लिए audience के लिए you're making. There is a life cycle that the content itself has, right? I mean, since especially talking about OTT, and whether a film or a series, I mean, there is at least 12 to 18 months, even when they push you really hard to deliver fast. Even then, what you are making today is only going to come out to the audience 1.5 years later. The reality and the metric of that time is going to look very different than today. Also, I can tell you is that while it's really wonderful that we are sitting and really analyzing content, not just in this room, but in many rooms now, and I think it's really needed, that we look at it from the lens of woman protagonist and, how the characters are being portrayed and all of that. But when the audience is really watching it, of course, there's an impact that is happening. But is the audience really choosing that it's a guy, so I will watch, or if it's a woman, I'll watch? He is strong, hai, to main nahi dekhungi, ya weak. It's got to hit home, right? And hence to the point that it may sound very idealistic when somebody says that it is a good story will really travel, but the truth is it really will. Yes, what we really need to do is find enough champions, because what happens is that when there is, as we say, proven content, right? When there is enough evidence to say that a film or a show like this works, then it's easier to make more of that content. It's pretty simple, and it's irrespective of it has happened in film, it has happened in television, it is happening in OTT. But what we really need is enough champions at all levels, creators, believers, who will say that it has not worked till now because it has not been made till now. And also to sometimes say that it was a woman-centric film, that's why it didn't work. How about just saying it was a bad film, that's why it didn't work? So I think this whole mystery of metric and everything, of course, your question being that is gender empowering content finding acceptance? I would say, let's not care. Let's make it, because and when good content will find acceptance or rejection, it will not happen because it is labeled in a particular way. So I think we should really sort of not let these metrics weigh us down. I get for every, I am very much on the business side and I get it, but the point is, it is storytelling, it is creative, it is a creative business. It's important to talk about business, but we must not forget that creative comes before business. So yeah, that would be my POV.
Wonderful. Anyone who wants to add to this? Hands up.
Also, I think it should be taken into account when a decision is made purely on the basis of storytelling and creative. It is not an emotional decision. I don't think anybody today leading a platform from a creative or a programming standpoint takes any decision in isolation. And I think the challenge becomes when you get questioned on the business or something just because it's different. Of course, a lot of stories which might be female-centric fall in that different category and hence get questioned because there's no empirical evidence, right? And God forbid we do anything without empirical evidence. But I think the important thing is to also take into account that anybody today empowered enough to make a decision on a show will see it from all aspects more than the person protecting just the Excel sheet and the P&L. Because when we put a story out there, there's an accountability which we take into extreme responsibility, not just from the fact that we're responsible for numbers, but the impact it's going to have on people who are going to watch it, even if it's purely from an entertainment perspective. I agree with Nimisha. Nobody goes out and says, oh, I want to watch a female-centric movie tonight. Or this is going to make me a better person, so I have to watch it. They watch it because they're hoping to get entertained. And in that process of entertainment, hopefully we've woken them up at some subliminal level. But I think the challenge is when all these decisions are seen purely from a business standpoint, and whatever data is thrown at you leans in one direction a little more than it should in the other. And which is where the question comes in, that how do you allow diversity which doesn't have proven formulae to support it? And data becomes actually the villain used in a lot of closed rooms like this to stop you from taking decisions which in your gut you know the country and the audience is ready for, but apparently there's not an Excel sheet to support it.
Lovely. Arjun, you wanted to say something?
Yes, just continuing what Nimisha had said and also what Karn was saying, even when we commission stuff, there is a very big problem wherein a lot of perception is driven by female-centric LGBTQ being treated as genres. Genres are action, comedy, drama. These are genres, ना? अभी उसमें कोई मतलब वो protagonist कौन है, क्या है, कहाँ से आया है, that is a by the way situation. So I think when we, that's how, like even when we did, when we read the first drafts of Kaun Banegi Shikharwati back in 2019, that was my first show, by the way. So it never occurred to us that, so it's basically a show about a royal who has 4 daughters who basically are fighting for succession. That if I just have to really break it down. It never occurred to us that there are 4 daughters who are fighting for succession of a male king. Because that's the first question we got asked when we asked some people around. And it had never struck us when we had already gone into shoot. So, it was an interesting story with a very sort of... So I think a lot to do with, stories and genres and just subversion. So if you're able to achieve subversion in that case, like, there's another example that just came to my mind is Criminal Justice 2. The season 2, although it had Pankaj at the helm and, it had Madhav Mishra who sort of helms it, he's dealing with an issue of marital rape. And it's so nuanced in its approach because at the end of the day, you have a crime committed, but is it really? So, it's actually what you're talking about on a subliminal level and Criminal Justice 2. So, it really is about story at the end of the day and what the story is doing. Abhi uska protagonist kaun hai, kya, like that gender or orientation or all of those things are by the way, or should be treated as by the way. So, yeah.
All of your points are well taken. Maybe this question should have read, how well have women-centric shows done on OTT in the recent past? So, anybody wants to answer that? How well have women-centric shows done?
I just want to share an interesting thing that happened on one of our shows, okay? And talking about what Pobali and Jyoti spoke about flawed characters, okay? So we have a show called Mithya, which has Huma Qureshi in the lead character, and we launched the show, and the show did really well, okay? So we commissioned season 2. So now we thought, okay, now that we are going in for season 2, let's do some research and let's figure out what people really loved about this character and what they didn't and everything. Now here's the thing, we already know that the show has done well because numbers and whatever, and that's why we are commissioning season 2. But when you really went out asking people, and interestingly, there were a lot of women this question was asked. I don't know why was there a question, what were the things that you didn't like about the character, but chalo theek hai. There was a question, what were the things that you didn't like about the character? So this woman in this show, she does not want to have a baby. And the husband is like really wanting to have a child, and we show that she is popping a pill and all of that, and the number of women who had a problem with the character saying that it may बाकी तो सब बहुत अच्छी है, सब कुछ बहुत अच्छा किया and all of that, but ये ठीक नहीं दिखाया. Okay, so you come back, there is this research team that has gone and done, and this, they have given you this data. Now comes the question of what do you now do with that? Do you decide that as a creator, as the creative team, as the platform, do you now decide that in season 2, to make her more endearing to those people, do you make her a woman who wants to have a child, or do you continue to make her that character. And I think that is where the power of having more women in decision-making positions really, really make a difference. And you know it.
Like we have TRPs for TV, do you have anything like that for the OTT content?
Thank God we don't, right?
Not yet, not yet.
No, that is very true, right? But there is no, because you know that who is watching how much. But what doesn't exist is that you can't truly compare a success of one platform with another. That's not comparable. And I'm just saying it's great, right? What is the problem in a world where everybody is winning and all the kind of stories are winning? I don't know, why do we have a problem with that? Sorry, Manali, you were saying something.
Specific point.
Yeah, the sampling is very
No, and the slot, right?
Exactly. Yeah, slot. I just wanted to add, just taking this opportunity to add something to the business side, although I'm a maker, but because I've worked as an executive producer earlier, just wanted to add to something what Pranali said and Amisha said. I completely agree with what they were saying about I'm refusing to believe that there is no demand for women characters or women-led or women-oriented shows, because there is a difference between who's watching actually and who's taking a decision in the boardroom. Sitting की कौन देख रहा है, किसकी डिमांड है, कौन बता रहा है आपको किसकी डिमांड है. आखिर में अगर हम देख ले, अगर नंबर वाइज, प्योर नंबर वाइज भी देखना है तो 50% women है. अगर क्लास ओरिएंटेड स्टोरीज है, कास्ट ओरिएंटेड स्टोरीज है तो 70% तो बहुजन है. तो वो नहीं देखेंगे तो कौन देख रहा है. ये जो डिसीजन है, ये अगेन दिस इज अ नैरेटिव दैट गोज अराउंड विद देम, बिकॉज़ द मेन आर लीडिंग दैट नैरेटिव कि इसकी डिमांड नहीं. अगर और दूसरी चीज है कि देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड नर्चरिंग द ऑडियंस ना. There is something what Nimisha said, this is today's reality. It doesn't mean that you want to believe that today's reality. You choose something. अगर वो नहीं होता, Shailana spoke about perception, right? That is exactly why a company can sell a stone to you and call it girls, diamond is girl's best friend. That is what nurturing the audience is. That is what perception is, what you believe in. I was an executive producer on Foundry. Now this is a film that if you come to me as a producer with a pure demand versus supply wala argument, I would say नहीं, ये तो नहीं चलेगा. एक rural इसमें लड़का है, he's from a caste which is marginalized and उसकी story उसके बाद कौन देखेगा. काला है, गरीब है, उसको हर दिन इतना problem होता नहीं. But no, it takes that one person to believe in that story and say, no, I'm going to take it because it's important for it, a subject like this. We were doing Dunyadari, we were doing Nata Samrat, we were doing Katyar at the same time, which were blockbusters and which were like the money makers, money spinners. But at the same time, we said that no, we're going to take this because it's important for that time to reach this story. And that same film, 1 crore odd budget film made 4 crores. It was a profit-making film. So I also refuse to believe that there is no demand or whatever. Yes, it changes. छोटी चीजें, छोटी लड़ाइयाँ हैं, छोटी लड़ाइयों से शुरुआत होती है, लेकिन वो छोटी लड़ाइयाँ करनी पड़ती हैं, तभी जाकर वो बड़ी लड़ाइयाँ बनती हैं.
I'll quickly just adding to that.
Pass on the mic, please.
So, एक और चीज होती है when people ask us to write an issue-based script. मतलब आपने पहले ही इतनी boring. The content has to be engaging. That's our first responsibility as storytellers. उसके बाद हम देखेंगे, उसके बाद हम बाकी की चीजें करेंगे, but आप बोर नहीं कर सकते लोगों को. Even when you have a, so yes, we have to remember that issue based. The minute you say that, we are not making a documentary here. We are making.
It should be issue based. It's a story, but it should be all rounded.
And yes, while और अगर वो करते हुए आपने कहीं तो वही nuances आप create करते हो ना कि आप underline. आजकल हम ऐसा भी बहुत करते हैं, हर चीज को ऐसे underline कर देंगे कि मतलब लोगों को we are just forcing them to. That also I don't think works. You should just let people and again tell an engaging story.
I want to say something here. Though you guys are all correct and you're for it, and that's what we should believe in, but there is a hard reality on the other side of the business. I do not belong to the marketeer or the business side of it. I am completely a person who handles behind the scenes, right? I don't have a choice in picking what film I'm doing or what I am supposed to make right now. I will get there one day. But I still hear things like, I'm just naming it, Shiddat 1, right? It's on Hotstar. I keep hearing it, that Shiddat 1 did really well on Hotstar for us, so we want to do Shiddat 2. So there is still a gap like that, and we do hear it. So there are a lot of content being made where it's about the creatives, you know. So there is this gap.
Yeah, that's animal part two.
That is the reality of the world in a way that as long as, say for Hotstar, as long as you're doing another area, you can do like Mrinalini said, it's not one versus another, right?
So it's just like we have to be aware that there are two sides of it, and we live in this world where we want to choose the best part of it, but we cannot forget this side as well.
Having said that, I think we take a lot of pride in the fact that we're able to show both sides of the same coin.
Yes.
Having said that, there is a lot of content. We have all watched A Mayor of Easttown and an equivalent in Hindi. We are all watching it. There are people making it. Yes, there are small steps. Like I, for example, I worked on a film. As in, I'm not a decision maker. I'm more of a consumer. I'm an editor. I don't meet anybody who makes the decision. We basically give up our moral rights. I worked on a film which had characters from LGBTQ. It had women who were single, working, all of that. My parents I take as the supreme example of the audience. Because they are the ones who are going to buy the ticket. They are the ones who are going to sit in the theatre. The biggest victory I had was, after that film, my father came out, who's very homophobic, let me tell you. He was like, oh, they so beautifully depicted the LGBTQ. So I was proud of the fact that a small step had such an impact on a human being who was homophobic. So these small steps, you know, that the women-centric film, they might be fighting battles or glorified, but at least we are accepting them. A thappad, for that matter. For whatever it was. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it. Most liked it. At least opened a conversation. An animal, I personally am quite cringed about it. Haven't seen it. But on the other hand, there have been people who've come and told me, you know, it's actually an academic study to see what kind of a reaction our society is having to this content. Sometimes it is a very opposite reaction. We are looking at numbers and saying, oh, it's big.
That's exactly what I'm saying. There's a demand for it.
There is a demand and there is a supply also. The supply is small, but that small supply is doing a lot of work. I'm glad of the fact that there is a supply happening thanks to, you know, all the women who are pushing the envelope over here.
During Kabir Singh.
Yes.
Today is
it's a
large
huge thing.
reaction.
And I'm sure some of us are watching it just to see ki hai kya.
I was asked to see it. I said, no, I don't want to pay and see it and wait for it to come on the...
That's a large section of audience.
I come on before reaching the popcorn. That was the part of the package. I think that's a big victory.
Yeah.
But can I say one more thing to your thought, please? I'm very sorry.
Sorry, she just finished.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just saying, since we are talking about ये जो audience की बात करें ना असली तो
You are right. That is our audience. Like even my mother, mostly वो मेरी भी फिल्म देख रही होती है, वो सो जाती है थिएटर में. तो मतलब उनको entertain करना, so that is my goal कि मुझे अपनी माँ को entertain करना है. She went to watch Animal and she had no idea उनके club, women's club लेके गया था उनको और उनको पता नहीं है कौन सी फिल्म दिखा रहे हैं. उनको अपने समोसे और पॉपकॉर्न खाना है वहाँ पे जाके एंड अपनी फ्रेंड्स के साथ एक शाम बितानी है. सो शी सेड मैं एक फिल्म देखने आई हूँ, कैसी है? एंड देन शी टोल्ड मी द नेम ऑफ द फिल्म. आई सेड आप कैसे देख सकते हो, ऐसी फिल्में हिट होती है फिर ये होता है. मैं अपनी तरह से बोली. एंड देन 1.5 घंटे के बाद शी टेक्स्ट्स मी, मैं तो जा रही हूँ, मैं समोसे और वो पॉपकॉर्न छोड़ के जा रही हूँ, मुझे बिल्कुल नहीं अच्छी लग रही है. एंड देन माई मॉम्स फ्रेंड सेड कि आप चलो हम लेके आते हैं आपके हिस्से के समोसे और वो. सो दे हैड देयर बट दे वॉकड आउट ऑफ द फिल्म. सो आई एम ग्लैड कि वो भी एक कॉन्वर्सेशन हो रही है और वो होनी भी चाहिए, बट हाँ ऐसे भी लोग हैं जो 4 बार देख रहे हैं, so I don't know what that is.
So the fact is that the amount of money that movie has made, that money is going to be pumped in elsewhere, and the industry is going to roll with that money, and nobody sitting in this room can deny that. I am just trying to understand how better films can make more money. That's all.
That's what we're all here to understand.
Yeah.
Last 15 minutes of the conversation. The reason UNFPA is, hosting this is to actually understand. This is the arrived woke set of people in this room, right? I'm not using woke in the negative sense. There is a larger universe out there for whatever reasons, which has to work differently, which has to think differently, and they are at a different stage of their sensitization journey, so to speak. So, what can a body like the UNFPA or Population First do, in your view, to bring them into this room the next time we have this conversation? Any thoughts?
Coming from an academic background as well, and having taught, I think, places like Whistling Woods, FTI, these places, if we get in more, if we're able to train more female professionals, more transgender professionals under that, invite more admissions on that level. Just to give you an example, when I was a student, we were a set of 7 editors, and we were, all boys, and we had 1 girl in our batch. Versus now when I go to teach, you have say 12 or 13, and you have an almost 50-50, sort of student. It's still not changed a lot in the actor training program. You still have a lot more boys coming in to come to study, in the acting program, at least at Whistling Woods or what I've seen. But if we are able to train more, do more, and then encourage more of, like I said right in the beginning, that if we have more assistants at that level, and then sort of elevate them, that at least becomes the starting point. And I completely disagree. I think we need a lot more female writers. We don't have enough female writers. We need a lot more female writers. We give it a lot more opportunities.
Actually, we do have a lot more, but it's just they don't get
We're talking who are actually working. So that's what I'm trying to.
The editor in the room wants to say
I'm
something.
an editor, both of us are alumni, 3 of us are alumni, 4 of us are from FTI.
No, but this room, no? That's
No, I'm just telling you, there are a lot of women in different aspects, especially now a lot of DOPs, which we all know are coming up. It also again goes down to economics. How many families are willing to spend money on a female student to pursue a career which has no guaranteed returns?
So maybe you guys can start a scholarship.
Also, I think to add to what Arjun said, I think it's also to do with the environment that these people will end up working with, right? So when you said only one editor, female editor, and the rest was boys, it's also to do with because women don't really feel comfortable probably working in that atmosphere, right? So I'll give you an example of we shot an inclusive film, ad film for Disney, which was all about inclusion and diversity, and it had all kind of gender, sexualities, and all of that. We ensured that on sets we had big board which said, people here identify themselves as, all across gender. They are transgender, they are gay, lesbians. Please ask them before calling them he, she, they, them, whatever. So, you make the environment friendly for them. So people come out and they want to work in that industry. They feel comfortable. You have to treat them equally. Then only they will come out. Otherwise, as you said, people will feel comfortable in only a small section of creative this thing.
But again, actually adding to Arjun's point, because once they reach the set and once they reach the environment, of course, then there's a separate responsibility and everything that goes on. And I feel that, but currently, to make sure that there are more women reaching those places. I was on the panel interviewing candidates for FTI last year, the year before that, and the number of women candidates is just very, very underwhelming. There can be many reasons. There can simply be, just the thought कि industry लड़कियों के लिए अच्छी नहीं है. बदल रहा है, लेकिन बहुत धीरे बदल रहा है. So I think that's a huge one. So somewhere, if either a scholarship that can take care, say, of a financial gap if there is that for somebody, but also if there can be a way of having in association with these institutes, if you can have some courses specially for women, you know, and when I say this, I usually get a response that, you know, like, let's not do that for only women and all of that. But the thing is that right now gap is so huge. You have to do some drastic steps to get to a point where, you know, then it's a level playing field, and then you can say, okay, same. But abhi nahi hai. So I think that really is a big one, not just for writing, but even for other streams. Also, I think mentorship is something which, and coming from a corporate side of things, I can really say that there are a lot of women till a certain level. You know, you will see lot of women till, you know, what we call in television creative heads and, you know, even executive producers. But the higher it goes, lesser the women. More powerful the chairs, lesser the women. More, you know, in the boardrooms where the decisions are being taken, lesser and lesser women. So somewhere that ceiling is truly a reality. So I think also facilitating some sort of mentorship program for women in the middle level career journeys. Now that can, I mean, I'm thinking aloud with all you guys here, but you know, like assistant editors, for example. So when they are not in really the yet their peak of their careers, but how can we enable women for those journeys to not drop midway and for it to really reach its full potential? I think that's a big one.
Can I?
Yeah, also,
Sorry. No.
Also,
Go ahead.
Documenting these journeys, because you know this was, in fact, Paramita had a similar workshop where, and they were talking about, you know, you should have role models. We all should have, and mentorship की जब आप बात कर रहे हो तो क्योंकि हमारे पास जब हम देखने जाते हैं, like today, thankfully I have, you know, some friends, senior writers, जिनको honestly आजकल कोई सच senior writers, जब senior writers की बात होती है ना, कोई उनको बुलाता नहीं है, कोई उनसे उनका जिक्र ही नहीं आता है. So सबसे to begin with to document these stories कि हमसे पहले ये लोग आ चुके हैं, ये काम कर चुके हैं, and they have done it, been here, done it, and just as reminders. So I think that is what we really need, you know.
And when you're seeing examples, you know, like you spoke about, say, flawed characters in the on screen. I think also this whole thing of women needing and having to do it all, even as professionals. So, matlab, you have to be top of your game professional also, you have to be a mother also, you have to take care of your family also, you've got to be married also. You know, those, only then are you successful. So I think we also need to really have a more inclusive definition of women's success. You know, either it is nothing or it is just so just simply really talking more about how success for women can look different is again, I think it can be so inspiring, because otherwise girls give up, right? कि इतना सारा तो नहीं होगा, but इतना सारा करने की जरूरत नहीं है.
जैसे शांता मुझे का अगर मैंने उनका एक इंटरव्यू सुना था, it was a longish interview, 2 to 3 hours, and it was beautiful, and I was surprised कि मैंने इतनी देर तक मुझे पता ही नहीं है ये सब. So we have to document it and then.
Women, so Insia.
Yeah, I just some ground realities, because I do this with a lot of colleges. What I've done is I've collaborated with Whistling Woods and I've spoken to Meghna Gai, and you're right. Very, very successful workshops. What has happened is I work with the Bharatnagar slums, which is just around the corner from here. I work with the students there, with the children there, on the ground, and I have noticed a lot of talent. So I have something called impact films that we do, and in that we mentor, you know, and I get people who are my friends from the industry who do workshops. So when I approached Whistling Woods, it was for an acting workshop for these children, and it was really fun. We were 60 children from the slums that we had taken and gone over there, and then this idea came about that why don't we give the deserving candidates a training and see what comes out from there, what kind of talent comes out from there. And it was a good workshop. It happened once. Now what I felt as kind of a gap was the fact that after the workshop, then what? Who's going to take them in? So my suggestion, everybody sitting here, is that maybe there can be workshops, and post the workshops if they are deserving candidates based on their talent, not because they are poor or because they are underprivileged, no, based on their talent. If you see anybody that's deserving, any girl, any guy, doesn't have to be just one gender or the other, but if we are talking about getting women into the mainstream, then how about big OTT platforms, big companies, big studios, keeping a program within their companies where you can actually give these children a chance under your wing, even if it's just an internship, keep one such provision where these children get an opportunity, where these girls get an opportunity to see the real world, because that never happens. There is glamour out there that they are very enamored by, but they don't know the real story, right? So give them that opportunity. And I do believe that there is a dearth of women producers. There is a very, very big dearth of that. So the more female producers come about, the conviction for spaces where there are films that are going to make an impact, like what Jyoti said, it does not need to be issue based always. We are not just issues. Why does every woman film have to be about an issue, So it can be fun. We are fun people also. We can have genres, not issues, okay? And have like an ecosystem that is created, and where UNFPA can come into the picture is you can sponsor these workshops, tie up with NGOs, tie up with film institutes, and do something where there's an ecosystem which works with an NGO, with the fundings coming from there, with probably people like Nimisha Pandey, and whoever is sitting here from big production houses can take these children in and give them the training that they deserve. And if they are qualified and if they are good, then they go on to real projects. So I see that as a solution, and I also see it happening. It can happen because there are funds that can be poured in, and it looks good for CSR too. So all of this.
I have one suggestion besides the mentorship and institution part, if I may, just 1 minute. I think that's a brilliant idea, but to start off, there are a lot of people who are getting unheard and their scripts are getting unread. So to start off with that, a very basic thing which I can suggest is to have some sort of a contest where people can just simply send in their work. If it's written well, if it's done well, maybe they can get proper mentorship to progress that more, or just get funded. Yes, just like that, because we do have multiple, but it's still not enough. So maybe that's where something can start in June.
Can I just add something?
Please. While you're adding, ma'am, with your permission, before they ask us to leave, should we ask them to grab a bite as they speak? Please, feel free. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to go back to the point where not many families and not many children consider cinema as a mainstream professional medium yet, right? And the workshopping that we're talking about, if we don't really just contain them to film schools and film institutes, but actually go ahead and make sure that there's workshops happening in every school, and the fact that cinema is a legit professional medium, children need to be educated about that. Children need to present to their parents that we want to go and work in the film industry. It needs to be taken as seriously as a business degree or a doctor degree or an engineering degree or whatever that is. Because film is legit today. You can run your house being a filmmaker, being a writer, being an editor. Yes, there is huge amounts of inconsistency because it's a freelance profession, but that's the education that needs to happen. And when children start asking for these career opportunities is when I think both the genders will feel a little more confident of being part of the industry, and that's when there'll be more women, more girls, 11, 12, 13-year-olds choosing to be part of the industry. So workshopping within schools of the country, educating them about how the film industry is a safe space will also probably help.
Not to mention it employs a huge number of people, and not all of it has to be skilled.
Yes.
I think the life cycle to become a skilled technician is way longer, but there's a huge chunk of people who get employed who are as valuable.
Yes.
And I think if that starts happening at a level, because I also think you need to get to the younger generation when they're the most fearless.
Yeah.
And as my memory serves, that's usually when you're around 16 till around 20. And I think there's not enough vocational training in our country.
Yeah.
The gap between the number of kids who want to qualify versus the number of institutions and seats there are very few. And what I love about the film industry is on set it's egalitarian. Everybody sits and eats together and everybody is given a level of respect because you're aware of the fact that every person of that 200 or 250 member team is important. And I think that is something that, because listen, the empowerment, if somebody is willing to get into film school, chances are they're already a little above average in some way or the other. Yeah. If not financial, at least from an exposure standpoint. But there are a lot of other aspects of filmmaking or production which empower people who genuinely need it, which is our ginormous middle class. Which is actually where if we tap that, that's where the change happens. The above, above middle class and below really are fighting battles which go beyond the kind of challenges we're speaking of in this room.
And thankfully, there's no age limit to be on a film set. If I'm not mistaken, Avinash Arun stood at the gates of FTII when he was 11 years old, just trying to understand what's going on in this institution. And he started assisting the students of that institute. And today, I think about 18 or 20 years later, he's the filmmaker. His education started when he was 11 and he had no resources. It was just that he was extremely inspired. So there's no real age limit to sort of starting to study cinema. We all as Indians grow up watching films. From our mother's wombs, we are just watching Bollywood. So I think we are already pretty educated. It's just that we are not technically skilled in it, and women and men and children need to sort of understand that it's possible.
Yeah, I have this thing. I would like to ask you, because you have said that we can start mentorships, scholarships, etc., etc. One thing is as an outsider coming and starting something. Another thing is the industry itself starting something through its institutions, through its regulatory bodies, through whatever systemic things that are available in the industry. So are there any such, like for instance we are working with Screenwriters Association, we are working with International Advertising Association, we are working with AAA SOFI, we are working with Ad Club, we are working with NWMI, we are working with people who are already who are from the industry and we are collaborating, and there is a greater buy-in when it comes from the industry than me going and saying the way we were talking, it becomes a genre, it becomes my cause, it becomes an outsider's cause, it doesn't become the industry's cause. So are there any mechanisms, are there any opportunities within the industry where we can work together?
I'd just like to make a point that I don't have an implementable plan like that, but the more we keep talking about women, I mean, let's assume for a while that women are generally sorted as to what they want. They might be very far off from there, or they might have struggles, but we kind of know what we would like. I think what is really in crisis in India is masculinity. And I think the more we keep saying women's workshop, women's thing, the more animal that film and that thinking will breed. I think, I'm not talking, like I said, like an implementable plan, but I think it's important to address young men and boys as to what heroism means. You know, if we keep this conversation constantly amidst women, we are stuck in an echo chamber. And the backlash is happening internationally, it will happen, it's certainly happening in India, that the notions of masculinity get more and more warped. So how do we, this is not going to happen, gender parity is not going to happen till men see eye to eye, right? So if you're just like a bunch of woke women teaching other younger women to be woke like us, very good, but you know, we are losing maybe part of our audience, maybe we are still not conversing and seeing eye to eye with the colleagues. How do we do that? Like I said, I don't have a plan, but I think it's important to address men on gender. Women more or less in our class or background, we kind of know what we want, even if it's not
There was that
right
big thing
now.
that went viral, right? Meryl Streep said women know how to speak male.
Yeah.
Men don't know how to speak women.
Right, exactly.
I just think it starts with mothers and fathers talking to their sons. And it just has to start at home.
Okay, I circle back to OTT, women, gender diversity, and so on. More women in the workplace, in the entertainment industry, definitely yes. Working with script writers, workshops, starting with school, all that is taken. Now, there is this arrived set of people who have evolved. Let's say they're a little more mature in their thinking on gender. Like ma'am said, it's not just women speaking to women and getting more women in the room. Beyond that, men need to be sensitized as well. Both men and women, there is a sensitization journey. There is a challenge of formulaic success, which many of you have pointed out. And there will obviously be the temptation to go that route because it has perceived greater acceptance and is more easily green-lighted maybe, like some of you have said. Now, what does UNFPA, coming back to the question, UNFPA do for those on the other end of the spectrum? How can they be brought into the fold? We can't do a ranking on the basis of gender. Just to give you a case in point, the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity, which celebrates advertising, introduced a glass lions category about 10 years ago. 1 year before that, Population First instituted the world's first gender sensitivity score for advertising. So we're just thinking, in what way can this larger animal called screen entertainment be
I can add to it. Yeah, so we, not specific to women empowerment, but Disney ran a program called, so the program was for anybody who comes from underprivileged background. It can be a woman, it can be a transgender, it can be a gay guy or a lesbian. And we gave them opportunities to make 6 short films, and Disney helped them. We trained them, we supported them, we gave them a budget, and so that was a way to train them, and we gave them a chance to make a film, and we hosted it on our platform called Disney Inspired. So programs like that can be thought of. Collaborations can be made where these kind of opportunities can be made.
Intersectional, sorry.
No, please go on.
Please finish.
I don't know how much UNFPA can contribute to that, but I think pay parity is one big issue with women joining this industry. Because in my case, for example, whenever I get a call, when we want a female viewpoint, it means there is less pay. It's given. It's just understood. They want to pay less, therefore they want a woman because, we are not the breadwinners or the people who hold responsibility, so you can work for a little less. So pay parity, I feel if it can be achieved, whether through labor laws, whether through conferencing, scholarship, whatever, will lead a long way for women to not drop out. Because the minute they are the ones who are earning more, they get the respect from their families, from their peers, from your producers, from your directors, because your money is equivalent to your time. So I'm getting paid more, oh, she must be talented, so I'm going to respect her. So therefore more people, my assistants get inspired by that. Other people get inspired by that.
Is it really true, as in Karan, you had DEI, and the others in the room, is it really true that, because there is an intangible called, caliber, quality, whatever you call it.
It's very true.
It's very intangible.
It's very
so is it purely on the basis of...
Very true.
And it's across, not just that.
It is across, yes.
It is across.
Pages
Even as a marketer,
On all,
it's not,
yeah.
and I don't even think it's only in our industry. Don't make us feel that bad. It exists in corporates as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry to repeat myself, but the makers of the Kabir Singh, or even the makers of hugely successful shows which are not women-centric, normal. Some of you spoke about the everyday character. How can that be made more real, more respectable, more empowering? Does not need to be the protagonist. There is a writer behind that. There is a director behind that. There is a whole team behind that. There is somebody who approves that. How does that environment change? Does it have to come from within and organically? Can there be an external intervention of any kind? I mean, apart from walking out of the theatres with the popcorn.
How about the unionization of women script writers? Is there any association like the...
I feel we have a danger if you keep drawing the gender card.
Exactly.
You know, because men feel the average, men feel that you're getting privilege. And also we are not representative of women at large, right? The fact that we have careers in media, sitting here talking all this, waxing eloquent already means we are in a minority section.
What I'm saying is that women cinema...
Women unionization will only
They have been doing a lot about pay parity in films.
But that our unions should, I mean, if we don't really
have
to
to
project
have
that.
But the minute we start fighting for the rights, like Kubali says, then it will become, oh, you have the privilege, so you go to a certain kind of...
And we keep hearing that. The very few women who are at work, they're like, you guys are women now, so it's easy for you to charm that man.
True, right? All we're asking is to have creative rights and freedom, which our male colleague would get. We shouldn't be looked down upon like somebody mentioned. What am I going to do the day my child is going to fall sick? How am I going to fulfill my services and duties? That shouldn't even be a question.
We fight over the length of maternity leave.
Yes, we shouldn't even have that conversation. Menstrual cycle, it's a part of all of us. There is, why are we even conversing about it? We all know, all men know, all women know. So yes, there are going to be days when we are not going to function 100%, but that shouldn't be attributed to because you're a woman. But men also have certain days where they can't, function. Everybody is not 100% every day.
But you speak about maternity leave, so just, I mean, on that, of course corporates have, but like, what about the production?
No,
there
is
that is something which, is a tangible...
You just don't take the project.
Yeah,
that's who's running on set. What do you do?
Yeah, you don't take the project, or you are not, don't take a project, you're going to get very stressed out because you will be called at odd hours, this, that. You're given a lot of spiel, but we know where that spiel is coming from. You're actually being very condescending by giving us, those kind of little, carrots to say that, stay back, we'll get a male counterpart to work on it.
Yeah. That's fact, you get replaced. I got replaced when
I always get replaced.
Not simple as that. Because then I was working there for many years and many hours, but then it's like, you're pregnant, you can't function anymore.
Karan, you wanted to say something in between, or did you? No, so I will still pose a question to the corporatized entities in the room. When you choose to work with production houses, suppliers, and so on, is there something that you would want to do as a filter, as a practice? Is there anything in place already where your DEI practice and philosophy actually extends beyond the organization?
No, so there are still, it's in process still, but we are aiming to put certain guidelines that we set for ourselves, not for anybody else, that when we go with a project or we go to a production house, we look for certain things like we want to give them a mandate of X number of percentage of your crew needs to be from diverse crew, like it can be from LGBT community, it can be women. So yeah, we are trying to do that, but it's very difficult when you put a number and you mandate it. Sometimes mandating doesn't really work. It needs to, the culture needs to integrate automatically.
So, sorry, you want to say something?
I just wanted to circle back to this union thing that we spoke about, right? Would it be that bad an idea? Because, right after Me Too, there was a Women's Cinema Collective which was formed by the women who work in the Kerala film industry because of the extreme patriarchy that exists over there. And a bunch of women got terribly alienated. People lost their jobs. There were actors, fine actors like Parvati, who was sitting at home for more than 3 years, Rima Kaligar, but they did it because they said, okay, let us cross this wave, let's break it, and now they're kind of coming back into the mainstream, but the collective still exists. If there is disparity, if there is any differentiation, if there is any kind of major issue that a female technician, actor, etc. are facing, there is somebody in the association who will speak for them. Now, is that such a bad idea over here? Or do you think because we are such a large industry and so much more patriarchal and the money matters so much more that it's not going to work? I'm asking a question as somebody who's not been in the industry as
long as you guys have.
And add on to that, how many women would actually join that collective
I
in the
would.
current circumstances?
No, mostly we have very little union participation in the film industry. The editors are just about trying to get organized. Writers Association, we've had one of the longer track records, yet our union membership is not so great and participation. So, you know, it sounds great as a thought. I don't think it works on the ground.
I just feel
half the people are not part of union.
I think allyship is stronger. So, I mean, having allyship is stronger. So, if the intent is to have a forum where the concerns can be raised, then maybe there can be a group of both the genders which say specifically focuses on issues. Sorry, issues. But the problem statements that kind of arrive of, you know, a situation which you need addressed. So there's a body that is addressing, say, if somebody got fired because she was pregnant. You know, so things like those. But to make that only women thing is not a good idea from my perspective.
Because I mean, a lot of people cannot afford to be cancelled or replaced. Like these girls, these women that you spoke about, they could choose and they could survive being home for 3 months. There are a lot of us who cannot do that. So if we get into that union and if we are being cancelled out or not getting proper work, then like I don't know what else we do. So yes,
you know,
if
union.
it's
So it's the fear of being cancelled that's
no,
stopping us.
you know what? If it's a union, and
Isn't there a certain power that will come with that union?
No, but you know, unions right now have just about achieved copyright.
Yes.
You know, we are
It's
right
the
now just
culture of
like,
union that doesn't
yeah,
work.
you know, no, it's just like getting the
And
power to
also,
speak
I
up.
have problems about. Finally, I'm in the labor market, irrespective of my genitalia. You know, I don't want to be known as a woman technician, a woman worker. I want to be known as a worker.
Actually, Laadli, when you are, so there are two problems when you are a woman. When you are a writer, let's begin with that. There is we operate in a very feudal setup. तो एक तो आप writer हो वैसे ही आप बहुत ही भूखियार है वो बिल्कुल मतलब आप कहीं you don't figure anywhere. Nobody cares about it. And then on top of it you're a woman. So I'm saying वो जो एक feudal setup है ना पहले हम उसको बदले. जब तक अगर आप बोल रहे हो हमें empower करना है, अगर हमारी आवाज़ आपको सुननी है, तो सबसे पहले आप irrespective of the gender, you empower writers. They are the storytellers. They create the blueprint. And उसके बाद फिर आप, when I say writers, I am talking about also, you know, editors, people who don't, you know,
are not in the limelight, are not noticed.
So no card बनता ही नहीं था पहले. Like for editors, I got a writer's
No,
card.
we are trying to make the union stronger, but like with all the encumbrance that happens around production, people are like, why am I going to put money
And then
into
there's a lot of that reverse
Sorry,
thing,
can
my
I just
producer is a
comment on
friend.
the Me Too? Can I give you an example? When the whole Me Too thing was happening in Bombay, I know for a fact that certain units dropped women from their units. Assistant cameraman, assistant.
didn't want to take
They just didn't want to take them because like, कौन ये tension पालेगा? Because already the way.
Not just that said.
So how is it
we were told?
Yeah, let's not hire these girls. Let's not take a chance on the set because you know the testosterones are really high on the sets. Let's not take a chance.
No, and the issue isn't about getting cancelled. The issue is the fight is to be treated as an equal. The moment you identify yourself by your gender, you lose that argument from the very beginning. Because eventually you're going to have to go up to some male committee that will eventually, like she said, suppose it's somebody who's been fired because they got pregnant. 9 out of 10 chances of boss is male.
Yeah, the identification is coming from the boss only, it's not coming from us.
The moment you go with a female union card, you're already on the back foot.
Okay, so the female union cancelled, right?
What we can try is look at an equal a representation in every union. Again, just like we were talking about decision makers here, when you're talking about projects getting greenlit. So if there is across from you, there's a woman sitting across from you making decisions. Similarly, if we are talking about unions, then maybe we should try and make sure that there is, at the helm of affairs, there are more women. You look at all the unions.
How does a UNFPA interfere in this and get representation for?
I'm just saying, create a this is how.
Right.
मतलब अगर हम यही बात बाहर कर रहे होते, कुछ लोग उसका एक नहीं, my point is just how we make content. Like we have to talk about
Point.
it.
Can I just
Please.
add something?
Please.
Yeah. So we have Posh, right? We have Posh, but Posh also has a disclaimer that only if you have a certain number of employees, then you need to have. Otherwise, you don't. So when there are smaller companies where there is no such, evidence of having so many people on the, where are those women going to go? So maybe while we are here, I agree with what Jyoti is saying, that maybe we can decide to do something that is a UNFPA project, and you guys come up with a cell for film professionals who have grievances of these kinds,
No, as
whatever.
of now, it is 10 people is what is required in an organization. I don't think any media organization has less than 10 people.
No, but I'm talking about freelancers. There are more freelancers than people who are working for organizations.
No, as per Posh, if you are working for an organization and if you get discriminated and you get equal rights, protection under Posh. So if you are a freelancer, I'm a freelancer, I'm providing service to say, and then I face any kind of discrimination, any kind of violence, then I can appeal to your internal committee.
Yeah, we've actually done that. We had people thrown off a project with regards to Posh, and there was a freelance, it was one of the editors on one of our projects.
Right.
And she faced something from another freelancer, and we literally just within 2 hours took the decision and had that person changed. But that was because of the same reason, because it fell under that umbrella. So it's, I think,
Because anybody who is working, even if I'm a salesperson and if I go to somebody's house and that man misbehaves with me, I can still complain to my internal committee and get justice.
No, I'm just giving an example of Posh. But what I mean to say is that we are talking about payment disparity happening. We are talking about females going through so many issues, right? About, again, issues. Issues about, not getting projects because they are pregnant or they have other things to do or whatever. So that kind of a cell.
Ageism in the industry.
Yeah,
Ageism
yeah.
not, मतलब writers को भी आप writers तो वैसे ही नहीं दिखते हैं. वहाँ पे भी इतना ageism.
Right.
Do you have anything like a DEI committee in the organization?
Every corporate organization will have it. It's a must.
So there maybe we should include some of these issues.
That's very complicated because a large part of technicians, writers, directors, we are freelancers. And to be honest, every time we sign a contract, we are most of the time waiving off our, signing off our rights. Legal rights, union rights, moral rights. So it gets very complicated for us because I know today if I'm going to take on a big production house and say something against them, I know there are 10 doors that are going to shut. I'm not going to get any jobs. So a lot of times I have to shut up, deal with it, hoping that somebody within that organization will be a little sensitive towards my issues again. And problem will kind of get solved, or one such case where somebody is replaced or because they were harassing. But being a freelancer, our contracts are extremely, I would say, makers biased than the service provider biased towards
So
them.
there have been so many times that I have gotten unofficial, because me being a woman, I have gotten unofficial complaints on the, so obviously we have multitude of projects going on at one time, right? So at some set which is remote. Now, for me to officially take an action, I need an official complaint, right? I mean, to your point. And that sometimes doesn't happen. But having said that, what helps is that because that person thought, the woman thought that she could feel comfortable and have that confidence, so I could deal with it in a different way of making sure, and also not letting the people know that she complained. Because that was an important part of it, right? So while Posh does take care of it, that the identity of the person who's complaining many times is kept hidden. But in a scenario like you're saying, that's very tough, right? I mean, it's a, so I think, to me, simply a body with both the genders kind of addressing these complaints when they come their way and raising it with respective organizations or unions could actually be a very doable thing. It's just that instead of one person raising a voice, there's a body of sorts, which is not a gender specific body, that is raising a voice. I mean,
also, a lot of these things will be very nuanced. Like those, the problems will be very specific to that thing. So, like these bodies will be able to understand them if they are people from within the industry and both genders. So, like it will be a very unique problem because for most part, like you're saying, my producer might be my friend, vis-a-vis my editor, my director might be a batchmate or something like that. So, a lot of those, because such a small industry also, a lot of these things play a part. So then anonymity, these things might be addressed through that than a sort of a overall, generic. Yeah.
Just shifting to the other side, what people see on screen at the end of having more women in the workplace, at the end of having these committees and representation and rights and so on. Is there, forgive my ignorance, is there an award for gender sensitive writing? Is there an award for gender empowering films that exists?
Only through Laadli.
No, that is still Laadli. I'm saying, should the national...
I think Z Marathi does one award called Unsa Maza Zoka, which awards only women. But it's a sort of an across the panel thing, but it also does...
No, it awards women.
From media, like it has specific awards for women.
No, I'm talking like the glass lines at Cannes, which award gender sensitive advertising. Should there be a filmfare gender sensitive category which is funded by the
That's a
UNFPA?
very good thought, and that might even be achievable. I don't see anybody saying no. We won't have this category.
Did have that, I think, for a couple of years. I don't know.
Pubali, Scriptwriters Association started with that, but they didn't continue.
I was a part of
They have one gender sensitive script.
women category, but essentially what you're talking about.
No, I think it is very important. By the way, we had given the what is it called, gender extraordinaire award to women in cinema collective this time, and also we have given gender champion awards to NWMI. We feel that something which is happening within the industry, when you fight or when you are forcing or initiating change from within the industry, it has much better impact than somebody else coming, because nobody listens to, right? I'm seen as a woman, iska to agenda hai, so it doesn't really work. So I need, we really need to work together to create something within the system. So I remember I told Anjum I need a gender sensitivity award, and then we got it. You had one or 2 years you had gender sensitivity. But afterwards I don't know whether it is there or not.
But having that is something mainstream.
And similarly for ad club also, we have asked for, made so many rounds, asked them, please institute one award for gender sensitivity, change makers, etc. And they did, and they are continuing with it. So it makes a big difference, because it shows that the industry owns up the agenda of gender sensitivity, and people value that award more than Laadli award. You know, to take, I mean, I don't have any illusions about myself or Laadli, but the fact is that if somebody gets an award from advertising, you know, at Abbey, that's a bigger thing than getting an award at Laadli, right? But starting that is very important, because the industry has to own up the value of gender sensitivity, whichever way, because apart from capacity building through training programs, creating ecosystems through unions and support mechanisms, what is equally important is reward mechanisms. Maybe having, you know, an OTT level awards for women content creators, producers, technicians, etc., which is totally women-centric, all of you coming together, would be a great idea. You know, because that is something which is, which people will say, oh, I have to win that award, so I will make, or we were also thinking of doing an evaluation of the various organizations for gender inclusion and other things, a kind of a survey. Would that be appreciated? Would I get a good response for that? To know, like, you know, what are the mechanisms that are available? What is the composition? What are the, you know, HR policies, data, and other things? So, would that be welcomed in the?
See, I think there are already some of those. So I just feel that the other things that you spoke about will have more tangible impact than this. Because this again, I mean, you'll have more numbers to probably prove that what we have been saying is right. You know, and also there are some reports that are already there. Most of the public listed companies also have the mandatory reports that they have. So you already have all of that. I mean, I think the things that are missing is worth focusing energy on versus doing more of what already exists. And that would be my point.
Basically entering into a narrative which we were speaking of earlier that is a little more accessible as opposed to being discussed in rooms like this. It becomes part of our everyday parlance in a conference room, and that we're armed with that ammunition of having those kind of numbers.
So you were obsessed with the sandwich, you forgot what you said. Didn't pay attention. Apologies. No, so ma'am, just to add to your point, I think some of the feedback that we heard earlier kind of tends to say that women-centric awards, an award for women-centric content, yes, but an award only for women technicians may not be the right way to go, is I think what some of them said earlier.
They said that about the awards, they said about the issues, but you know, for awards it's important to make it as an aspirational value. Laadli does exactly that, creates gender as an aspirational value. So you have journalists writing from a gender perspective, filmmakers making from it, like our review of ads in campaign magazine, rating of the ads on a gender scale. I was at some function and 3 people have come up and said, oh my God, when I read your review, I realized that, you know, I have missed out something important. So it's not being critical, but just giving them a perspective about, you know, what we had in fact done for Sony TV. We analyzed their 4 serials, random episodes on gender sensitivity. And there was something very simple things like whenever they showed a police woman, she was always in the background and it is the male police officer who was doing the whole investigation. In many of their crime patrol serial. And when we pointed out this place, and I was very happy that after 2-3 weeks or months, somebody told me there was an episode where the woman was leading the investigation. So we didn't say, oh, you're so bad, you didn't show a woman out, but we just said, this is a recurring image that comes in your, you know, in your film. So would you like to, I mean, just mention that. Like that we had done the analysis of, one is from disability perspective, there was one serial with a hearing impaired person. So we had done how they are showing disability in their films. And then we done one with crime and women in authority. And then we did 3-4 serials, very popular serials of Sony TV. So that kind of a thing we can do as outsiders. But there are certain things which need to be done from within the industry. So yeah, if there is any way in which I can do a similar kind of a thing with the OTT, like reviewing, or is it possible to have like some newspapers have gender editors? Okay, yeah. Is it possible to have some gender editor kind of a thing in the, not gender editor, but somebody who gives an overview of or gives a feedback on the serials from a gender perspective in the OTT, you know, platform? Would that be possible? Like, you know, you can have someone who actually, it need not be before screening, but after screening, we can give a feedback on what went right, what went wrong when it comes to gender, what could be improved. Would that be possible in the context of OTT?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds possible because there are all sort of reviews happening, and if there is another review which is reviewing it from this lens, I see no harm.
And technically, if they already have, like, if
SNG is that.
Max is doing it.
No, Max is still external. So
No.
lot of thumb.
You have a lot of
but that was a
No, but she's saying of seeing the content and talking, like how the examples that she gave. See, that's what I'm saying. One is about a broad stroke report, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the specifics, right? Because something like this, the moment it comes into notice, it's not about जो दिखा दिया वो हो गया, but if people have seen it, heard it, even if that can make a difference in the next show, I mean, so those are small things that will.
Nimisha, that SMP is done at the script level.
If you could tie up with the media
Which
house
SNP?
and make a column
Script level has an impact only within the
apart
industry.
from film reviews so hota hi hai.
When you're doing a
But we're also looking
report.
at this week's slate of programming and what it did for what it explored.
And also to make it more engaging, because people don't end up watching it otherwise. Like what Paromita does. I mean, hats off to her. She says things which normally are,
Nobody
very
addresses
boring,
those issues.
but the way she does it, I think
It's very entertaining.
Very entertaining. So, and she has a huge following. So maybe you can also tie up with someone like her, and she can maybe come up with some.
So lot of-
She's a
lot of
part of
companies-
Big Day, which is a very
Oh
popular
yeah,
thing.
that's her
That's her
column.
column. I'm so sorry I interrupted you. Her column comes on Sunday midday, and it's a very popular column. You know, there is
Paranormal
four of them.
activity, yeah.
Yes, there's Paranormal, there is Meenakshi Shetty who writes, and two other people. So similarly, if you're saying if it's done at the script level, it's only within that room. It's not going to go out of that. And also, when you're publishing it, I'm on a Sunday morning, I can read it and I'm like, oh yeah, really?
It's like celebrating people publicly and kind of little shaving them publicly.
Yeah, why
So
not?
that's fine, right? I mean, also SNP again, it is a internal. I mean, all the platforms, all the channels have it. Again, I mean, I don't know how many men, how many women in that team. Again, what is the
How do you
sensitivity
actually,
level of the people actually doing it? Because they are again operating out
And
of.
how much of it is mainly to say let's not do something stupid.
Let's not get sued. I mean, SNP is like let's not get sued, right? Let's
No,
be
so
real.
Nimisha, to add to what you're saying, like of course.
Spare us more reviews, man. जो भी करो बाहर करो. We certainly don't want one more round of feedback.
No, so SNP, we also at Disney also there's the SNP team. What we did is like the diversity and inclusion team. We sat with SNP team because SNP's job is, as she said, it's mostly from legal point of view and to safeguard the company. But we sat with them. We involved people, external people like organizations like yours, and we made a guideline. We call it stories that matter, and we gave it to them. So now their job is not to not from just legal point of view, but they also look at content from diversity and inclusion point of view. So for example, like recently they were reading a script and there was a joke on adultery. Like the hate पे कुछ joke था कि एक बंदा दूसरे को बोल रहा है कि हाँ तेरे को तो बहुत दहेज आया है, तेरी तो life मस्त हो गई. They pointed that out. So it was so their official job is not to call that out, but they did because we created this module and we gave it to them. So I think organization that can be worked.
While that is done, people also have to remember that it's a nuanced.
Yes, of course.
discussion.
It's always
कई
nuanced,
बार
yeah.
उस चक्कर में क्या
Because
होता है,
it's
real life में
Yeah.
कुछ हो रहा है,
हाँ.
क्योंकि लोग अक्सर ऐसी बातें करते हैं.
Correct.
Now the way to rectify that is कि ऐसा कोई करे और बाद में
Exactly, yeah. That's nuanced, very nuanced, yeah.
That's exactly what we did with one of the serials, Annapurna, what is it? Anupama. Like, it's true that you have to show violence, you have to show people go through it, you have to establish the story, right? And it happens. But the thing is, when that is happening, is there any character who's commenting on it? She accepted, yeah, it is this and I'm the ideal mother. But is there somebody, a maid or some neighbor, some friend, some family member? Is there a conversation happening about this violence that is happening? Is there a conversation throughout? It doesn't happen. 150 episodes of soft story, then suddenly she discovers that she has to fight it off. So you have completely established for 150 episodes that it is okay to, be violent towards women. So that is where we said that, you have to have these kinds of subplots, conversations happening while you're telling the story. So similarly, even in advertising, I say the same thing. Your target is women. You have to sell oil cooking oil to women. Sell the oil to women. You cannot have the protagonist as a man making puris because nobody will relate to it because men don't make puris. They may maximum put a cooker, but they don't do the puris, right? So when you are showing a woman making the puris, where are you showing the man? Sitting in the easy chair reading the paper? Or what is he doing? Like, or you are showing...
glorified as multitasker.
No.
मैं पूरी भी बना लूँगी, मैं काम भी कर लूँगी, बच्चे भी संभाल
No, that's what I said. When you're showing the woman doing the puris, show him setting the table, show him teaching the children, getting the homework done, cleaning the vessels, somewhere in the kitchen, sharing the work. But if you don't do it, then you are reinforcing the thing. So it's not necessary to have always women, fighting kind of a thing, because we are all in the commercial business. We have to meet commercial requirements. But how do you show the ecosystem? How do you show the whole overall presentation of men and women? The power equations between them, the role relationships between them, which are very, very important, and the entitlements. Okay, entitlements, power equations, role relationships. How do you show them while sticking to the by and large, whatever is your target audience and their requirements? Are you willing to do that? That is what is my always suggestion to creative people, because it's not necessary to be aggressively, revolutionary or woke in that sense.
I mean, it's necessary to be that also.
Yeah. If necessary. That's why I said not always.
So I think we have very little time left of the extended time. So Dr. Sharda, would you wish to propose a word of thanks in close?
We'll be sharing the merits of this meeting, find out whatever are the main points that have emerged. Please give your inputs and we'll work on. I want it to be an action-oriented. I want something to come out of this meeting. I just don't want it to be a talk shop we all spoke well and that.
Yogesh sir.
I think.
Yes sir, go.
I think Dr. Sharda kind of said it right that at the end of the day, so many people who have such busy schedules that taking their time out to be at this roundtable discussion. First of all, I want to thank each one of you for making time and coming and sharing your views with us. We'd like to take this forward in terms of collating all these thoughts together and see what we can do actionably in terms of really working out some kind of a change. Thank you very much to each one of you. I'm not taking each one's names because that already, like he said, we are pushing our time. So thank you so much. Thank you once again, every one of you, Dr. Sharda and Gokul also, for moderating the session so beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So please have your, we have time for that.
Yeah, that's the more important question.
Yes.
We have time.
We have time.
No, please
Please
have.
have your.
Because these sandwiches are very difficult to handle.
I know.
No,
Calling it out as is.
Jyoti, when we spoke to them, they said they're going to be light sandwiches. But I mean, this is like
That's a full meal.
you require a JCB machine to pick them up.